So I want to talk about AEW Double or Nothing. And this pay-per-view is definitely very concerning for me because, this is one of the big four pay-per-views. And I've mentioned this in a few other videos that this is really their anniversary pay-per-view. The same way Slammiversary is the anniversary of TNA, or you look at WWE and, WrestleMania is almost like, a show that's considered like an anniversary show. And I don't, or like you look at Combat Zone Wrestling and they have like the Cage of Death as their anniversary show. And I believe it's Super Card of Honor or Death Before Dishonor is that for Ring of Honor. Or One Night Stand is that for ECW. But the thing about it is that they don't have any matches announced except for two. And one thing I've been liking about AEW is that they don't give you what you want anymore. Because usually with AEW in the past, they always want to rush out like dream matches, and they also want like happy endings, really. And then the other thing too is that they're probably going to do a cage match with Joe and John Moxley, and then after that, they're probably going to announce Anarchy in the Arena and what it's going to be, or if they're going to do Blood and Guts match instead, really. So the slow burn is actually really good, and then it's also good for Tony Khan because as a creative person, you can't always give people what they want. And one thing that Vince McMahon always preached was this, that you never ever give people what they want. And part of that also means you never give people what they want when they want it. Sometimes they have to wait. Like, for example, you look at Jeff Hardy, they could have made him the WWE champion at the Royal Rumble, or they could have done that at WrestleMania, or they could have done that through the Money in the Bank contract, but they actually waited until December of that year to do that, when it was kind of like, strike while the iron is hot, and the year strong, really. So they had a lot of really great moments. Or you look at John Cena turning heel, that people wanted that to happen for roughly 20 years, but they kind of said, hey, it means the most this year because there's a lot of eyes on John Cena since he's going to retire. So when you have like Tony Khan with Double or Nothing, I really can say, hey, he's going to make us wait a couple of weeks. We're going to have to get to Samoa Joe versus Moxley in Chicago. And maybe after that, they're going to announce the main event of Double or Nothing. But there's also this issue with AEW. And I think one of the big issues is that they have way too many special shows. So you had Spring Break in Boston. Now you're doing the same type of thing in Chicago. And I understand it's supposed to help the attendance. It's supposed to get more eyes on the product, really. But they overdo it. And that's one of the reasons why they suffer. Because you have way too many special shows, or you try to make it a pay-per-view quality. Your pay-per-views diminish, or you're building up to matches on the special shows versus matches on your pay-per-view card. And then I also think the other issue is that I'm very proud of this with AEW, is that they've not done Battle of the Belts. Like, that needs to be retired, because with Battle of the Belts, they've been doing a lot of, contendership matches, or they've been doing a lot of matches where people are facing each other for titles, and there's been like really no title switches unless there's a vacated title. So I'm happy that they've nixed that, because that was not good, really. But with Double or Nothing, I really think they're throwing it under the bus for the Chicago show and the Boston show. And then I would also say too that if you want this to feel like a Big Four show, they need to do a lot of just really great matches, and they need to use like Dynamite and especially Collision to show that Collision matters and build matches to AEW Double or Nothing. So, and I also think my big worry is I'm not sure what they're going to do this year for a main event. They can have 3 main events. Like, one main event could be Samoa Joe versus John Moxley Part 2. They could do Anarchy in the Arena, the Ops and Swerve and Hangman versus versus the Death Riders. Or they could have, the Death Riders and Swerve, the Death Riders versus the Ops and Swerve and No Willow Nightingale. Or they can have a main event where it's like the Ops and the Death Riders involve Swerve and Willow and Marina Shafir, and they do Blood and Guts, really. But I really don't want them to do that, because Blood and Guts is a television special. So why get rid of Anarchy in the Arena? And I understand why they would want to get rid of Anarchy in the Arena, because it's a match where a lot of people can get hurt, and you don't want people being out on injury and other things like that. And sometimes with AEW, there's creative control. And last year, Darby Allin hit Jungle Boy with a flamethrower. So it's almost like, how do you just top that, really? So, so I really think that, that's one of my other big concerns, is that one of the reasons why I actually bought my seat to Double or Nothing this year was to be like, hey, I think it's going to be Anarchy in the Arena. I bought a seat within, like, not like in the ringside area, because Anarchy in the Arena, you want to be, in the crowd, and that's really helpful, really. So I think that there's people who have expectations of what that show's going to be, and they're not going to live up to that. And then the other thing, too, is that it's a 22,000 seat arena, but they have like 6,000, between 6,000 and 6,600 people who bought it, who bought tickets, really. But they need to make that 20,000 like sell out, and they have to like have great matches and compelling stuff, but they're really just being lackluster with it. So I'm very concerned about it. And like I've said, I think some matches that I have is that do Anarchy in the Arena, the Death Riders with Marina Shafir versus um versus how should I kind of say this? The Death Riders and FTR, or the Death Riders and Marina Shafir versus the Ops with Swerve, and you have Willow Nightingale in it, because people expect Anarchy in the Arena. You can do Tony Storm versus Athena, and if Athena beats her, then you have a like triple threat winner takes all match. And then you also do um, on that card, you do Anthony Bowens versus Okada, and because you need to make Anthony Bowens look strong, you need to show him as a new talent. I would say Adam Cole versus Kyle Fletcher would be a great match. You should do um, LFI versus CMLL wrestlers, because they just sold out AEW Grand Slam. You need to have some luchador matches. I say Nick Wayne versus Bandito, or Christian Cage versus Bandito. Show that the Ring of Honor title matters without Christian Cage involved. You do MJF versus Bobby Lashley initiation match. If MJF beats Bobby Lashley, he's allowed to be in the Hurt Syndicate. You set up a fatal four-way match with Marina Shirakawa, Marina Shirakawa, Mariah May, Anna Jay, Harley Cameron, or a few other women, and the winner of that um, will face Mercedes Moné before she faces Tony Storm, because obviously she's gonna win and face Tony Storm. You do Kyle Fletcher versus Adam Cole. You change the titles. You can do Ricochet versus Kenny Omega, and I would have had Ricochet win the international championship for a couple of weeks, and then you put back a Kenny Omega, Kevin Knight, and Speedball Mike Bailey versus the Young Bucks. So they have great chemistry. Um, and then there's a few other things that you can do, really, but they really need to start like building and having really great matches, and just understand that it's not that hard to create matches. They should have some luchador matches, because you just sold out AEW Grand Slam. They should be talking about it. They should have like maybe an open challenge match for Anthony Bowens. He could face like maybe Minoru Suzuki or a Japanese wrestler to set up Forbidden Door, or maybe a wrestler from from Pro Wrestling British, or like that British Federation, or British Rev, or something like that. And I think Eddie Kingston's planning to come back, really. So you need to have Eddie Kingston involved, maybe in Anarchy in the Arena, or maybe he joins John Moxley or something like that, really. But it's not that hard for them to make a great show, but it kind of goes down to what I see with AEW, is that it's like what they do is like success is not that hard for AEW. It's really not that hard, but they keep shooting themselves in the foot, really. But I think with Double or Nothing, I really don't see a lot of care in it, and I hope they start caring about it, and they make a main event that warrants it. And you also understand that it's an anniversary show, so you don't treat it like TNA Bound for Glory 2014, when they went to a high school gym in in Japan, and they were just, doing a crappy effort, really. You really have to knock people's socks off. You need to say, hey, you know what, you have like 6,000 people, I'm guessing, in a 21,000 seat arena, so give a shit. Work hard to make that a sellout. Because I think with AEW, another big issue that I'm seeing is that they may be like, well, we're not getting good attendance, so we're not really going to care, really, when they should care and do their best to boost the attendance, So they just need to do better.